on the shortcut, what questions do you want to see you go over, have questions about? Majority I'm seeing are 4 and 5 and 2. If you have something else that I love this. In number 2, because this is a vertical line and it's shaded to the right, that has to be an x equals or an x inequality, and that would be everything greater than or equal to, so b. You could also put that into Desmos and double check that, and you should get the same thing, that it's a vertical line shaded to the right. Questions on that one? For number 4, you can put this into Desmos by putting in both sides. And when I do that, nothing happens. So I know this has to be either infinitely many solutions or no solution, because there's not a line at 0 and there's not a line at -5. So then I'm going to separate this, take just the back end off. And then I can see that these two overlap, which would make this infinitely many solutions. So if you use Desmos, make sure you use Desmos. If not, make sure you have your work. If it was no solution, it would be 2 lines and it would be parallel. Questions on that one? And then number 5, we need 2 inequalities that match, so I can look for the one that would be obvious. This is a solid line that starts at 3, so it has to be greater than or less than or equal to. And then my slope is positive x, and it's shaded above, so d. And then I just have to see which of the 2, E or F, also match, because the other ones do not. And I'll type in D first. So we know it has to overlap this. So if I put in E, so that's the other side, so it wouldn't be that one. But then if I do this, you can kind of see the overlap here. They overlap each other. So it is F and D. And you could have solved that by hand to see that those are the same, or graph it in Desmos. So if you did that in Desmos, make sure you say that. Questions on that one? Next class will be the last shark bite of the year. And then maybe turning in your shark bite info sheet will be formative, so make sure you have all of those. Look at your notes. Some of this is going to be review on previous taught things. things, we did talk about domain and range with our quadratics and exponential functions. We're just going to talk about it again with a bunch of different types of functions. So let's review what is the domain. What does that refer to?
X.
The x values. And the range.
Y values.
The y values. So when we look at domain and range of all these different functions, we're looking at two different types of graphs. One is discrete. Where it's a bunch of random points on the graph. And the other one is continuous. Where it's a line that's connected or a curve that's connected. So all of your linear functions, your quadratic functions, exponential functions, those are all continuous graphs. So then there's some other review up here. When it touches or crosses the x or y axis, you have a y-intercept or an x-intercept. And then for your x-intercept, that's also known as a zero, solution, or a root. And the reasons are up there again. So we're going to do a couple examples of domain and range and connecting it back to is this a function or not. So first, is example 1 a discrete function or a continuous function?
Discrete.
Discrete, because they're random word pairs, everything. So because of that, we're going to put our domain and range in curly brackets, and it's going to be a set of numbers. Domain is going to be your x values least to greatest. So that would start at -4. What would be the next one?
-2.
-2, keep going.
1.
-1,
3.
1, and then 3. If you had any repeating x's, you would only list it once. Then we're going to do the same thing for the range, but lowest to highest. That lowest would be -4, keep going. 2,
3,
3,
4.
4. And then, is this a function?
Yes.
Yes. It passes the vertical line test. It doesn't have any repeating x's. Do you have any questions on how to find the domain and range of a discrete function? Go on to the next page. So then, same thing. This is what type of function? Discrete. So same thing. We're going to list out our domain and range in curly brackets. What is our furthest point to the left?
-6.
-6. Keep going.
-3.
-3, 2, 4. And then for our range, lowest.
-8.
-8.
-8, -4, -3, and then 1. Yes. Is this a function?
No.
No. It does not pass the vertical line test. Right. So that's how we write the domain and range of a discrete function. Now, for our continuous functions, there are two different types of continuous. Some that start and stop, and some that keep going. We'll do the ones that start and stop first. if these have starting and stopping points, they have endpoints. If you want, you could draw in lines where they start and stop, left and right, up and down, both sides. But the format of how we write that is still going to start with curly brackets, but the format is different. So we're going to start writing, each one is going to be written like this, x, a vertical line. Where would this start? What's the furthest point to the left?
-5.
-5. You're always going to put less than or equal to signs, so less than or equal to because these are closed points. X, less than or equal to, what's the furthest point to the right? 6. Curly brackets. So this is saying your domain is everything between -5 and 6, everything in between, but it starts at -5 and it ends at 6, and both of those are closed points. Now, we also know that interval notation in square brackets, that would be -5 on 6. On the SOL, you may see it more like the first way, set builder notation, than an interval notation, or you may have to recognize that they're the same thing. Questions on that before we do the range? So then, same thing for the range, but now we're looking lowest to highest.
-3.
So it's going to start out the same way, curly brackets, but now range, so y, line, where does it start? -3. Less than or equal to y, less than or equal to
4.
4. So that would be our domain, that would be our range. Questions on either of those? Oh, interval notation. That would be -3, 4, 3 was here, in square brackets. Now the rest of this is just review of previously taught information. What are the x-intercepts of this? 2 and -4, so we'd write those as ordered pairs, -4, 0, and 2, 0. We have y-intercepts. It's a little off, so mine's a little off, so I'm going to put wherever mine is, but if yours is at -1, you can put it at -1. So I'm going to put mine at like -1/2. Is this a function?
Yes.
Yes, it would pass the vertical limits. Do you have any questions on anything we just did for our continuous function? Let's try this next one. Again, if you need to draw in furthest points to the left and right and lowest and highest, you can do that. Domain is going to start off the same. X, the line, or such that, if you're reading it mathematically. What would the furthest point to the left be?
Yes.
-4. And then less than or equal to x, less than or equal to, what's the furthest point to the right?
4.
5.
5. Should be 5. In interval notation, -4 to 5 in square brackets. Okay. The range, how would we start writing that?
Curly brackets, y, vertical line, -6. Left is less than or equal to y, less than or equal to
6. Curly brackets. In interval notation, that would be -6 and 6. X-intercept,
1.
if yours is at 1, go for it. Mine's a little bit in between, so I'm going to put mine at a half. Y-intercept,
1.
again, if yours is at 1, go for it. Mine's, again, in the middle, so I'm going to put mine in the middle. Is this a function? all of your linear functions are functions unless it's a vertical line, because then it automatically fails the vertical line test. I want you to try the rectangular one on the next page, and I'll give you a moment to do so. What was our domain here?
Negative x.
Say that louder.
-5
-5
less than or equal to x
less than or equal to 4. Curly brackets. Okay, what about the range?
Curly brackets y. -5
less than or equal to
x.
Y.
Oh,
less than or equal to
6.
Curly brackets. So make sure you're changing them. Domain is x for both. Range is y for both. X-intercepts.
-5
4, 0.
And y-intercepts.
0
0,
-5
0, 6.
I heard the 0, 6. I didn't hear that one.
0, -5.
Is this a function?
No.
Does not pass the vertical line test. Do we have any questions on that? So now we're going to do some continuous functions that keep going, that have arrows. So with example 3, it still starts off the same way, x such that x the line. But when we're looking at this domain, this is a quadratic function, the U shape, it is a parabola. I have to imagine that this keeps going down and left forever and ever towards that direction, and it keeps doing the same thing in the other direction. So where would this start?
3.
If it keeps going down and
Negative.
left,
negative
negative infinity, where would it end?
-infinity
3.
So
Or
think about the x values. It keeps going into the positive infinity. So when we write that in set builder notation, you're going to write x, this root e, and then like a double R, which means all real numbers. Same thing as negative infinity to positive infinity. So when you read it, x such that x is an element of all real numbers, or all real numbers. For your range, the lowest point here would be what? Negative infinity, and the highest point would be 3. So here, we're just going to write it as an inequality. It's everything below 3. So y is less than or equal to 3, and that's it. So you have to be able to tell the difference when you have arrows and how you write that, and when you have endpoints and how you write that. Or if you just have a discrete function. Do you have any questions so far? What would the x-intercepts be? If yours fall at -2 and 2, you can write that. Mine are a little off, so I'm just going to make one up. And then the y-intercept? 0, 3. Is this a function?
Yes.
Yes. All quadratics are functions unless it's turned on its side, then one is not a quadratic and 2 is not a function. Let's try example 4. What would that domain be?
Curly bracket.
curly bracket x vertical line x the weird e the double I and the curly bracket.
All real numbers because it keeps going left and right. What about the range?
Like a line. A line pointing near E of Y. Curly bracket.
Because that would keep going down and up. And then the x-intercept here,
Four.
-4, -4, 0. The y-intercept,
3, near 0, 4.
I don't think it's at 3. Yours might be.
Mine's at 2.
It should be at 2. Is this a function?
Yes.
Passes the vertical line. I want you to try the next one on the next page. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do so. What is that domain?
Curly brackets, x, vertical line, x with 3, and vertical with E and double R. Curly brackets.
So it's not going to be all raw numbers for the domain.
X is greater than 0.
It's
Greater
greater
than or equal to.
because it has a starting point, but it keeps going to the right. It doesn't go left and right. So it can't be all raw numbers. But for the range,
Curly bracket Y, vertical line, Y, 30, curly bracket.
the range is all raw numbers because it keeps going down and up. X-intercept, 0, 0. Y-intercept,
0, 0.
0. Is this a function?
No.
Look at the practice problems on the next few pages and find any you want to see you go over how to do that.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
So when you say 2, you remember one.
Mhm.
And then 3, this one.
Mhm.
We're going to do part of this with the domain and range, so you see what that looks like. Are there any others on the next couple pages? The circle one. Okay.
Can you do that one too?
Do that one more time.
Can you do the first one on that page?
The first one, this one. Alright, so starting with this one. Remember, imagine your domain. What's the furthest point to the left on this one? If this keeps going down and left. Okay. What about the furthest point to the right? So then what would this domain be? All real numbers. What about the range? What would that be?
C.
It would be the same thing. It keeps going down, it keeps going up. X-intercepts.
-3, 0, and 3, 0.
There's one more.
0, 0.
Y-intercept.
0, 0.
Is this a function?
Yes.
Questions on that? For this next one, for our domain, look at the furthest point to the left, the furthest point to the right. What would that domain be? Real numbers. Now look at our range. What would our range be?
-6 to -2.
So this one has starting and stopping points. So curly brackets y such that -6 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to -2. They can be different. They both don't have to be the same type of, one is talking about when it has arrows and one is talking about when it has endpoints. It may be different. What are your x-intercepts here? There aren't any, so you can put NA or none, don't put 0. Y-intercepts?
-6. Those are -6 and
One more. Is this a function?
no.
Because of that middle part. We're just going to talk domain and range of this next one. What would the domain be?
All the numbers.
All numbers. The range, does it move? No. So when you write your range, it's just going to be y equals. Y equals what number?
0.
4. And then I'll let you guys do the x and y intercepts and functions later. Questions on anything on this page before we go and do the last one?
So this would be a function.
This one would be a function, yes. So on that last page, this first one, what would that domain be?
All the numbers.
Real numbers. What about the range? All real numbers again. So that should be y. A lot of the things with arrows pointing in both directions will be all real numbers. Could be for both, it could be just for one. X-intercept, it looks like there's multiple, but there's really just one. Is this a function?
Yes.
Why is that only one? Why is there only one?
So this is a cube root function, a cube function. I'll just show you what it looks like. It looks like it's more, but it's really just one stretched out. So this would be just one, but sometimes that base gets bigger, but it's still just one. Right. For the circle, what would the domain there be? It is -1 to 7. How would I write that?
It's less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 7.
So bracket range.
Less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 7.
Most of the time, if you see circles, the points will be the same, but it depends on where the circle is located, because they could not be. X-intercepts.
Like 1.5 and four, 5.
So 0.5 and let's just make it easier. If I'm just going to say it's at 6 and 0. If it's not actually, it's okay. Y-intercepts. Sure, I'm just going to say mine's at 0 and 5 or 6. Sure. It's not actually, you have to make the decimal, but that's okay. function. Do we have any questions in general on how we find domain and range? You guys do have a Delta Math on this, but it's due next week. The Delta Math that are due today are your radical operations and your relations and functions. You could be working on any of those. Past Delta Math, your 8-ball packet, your test math packet, the Math Gap SOL packet from before, practice quizzes, practice from your notes, be working on functions. Let me know if you're